Welcome back to ESPN FC Live here on YouTube. That's Janusz Michallik. I'm Dalen Cuff. Going to be a great show for you. Obviously, we were going to relive or discuss Man United's challenges, to put them lightly. We'll talk some underdogs, Girona, Villa, and others in some big leagues, Leverkusen, and they're still top of the table. Will they be able to finish up there? And then we'll get to some transfers right now. We're only a couple weeks away from the January window opening. What will be a really good fit? Janusz, before you and I kind of dive into it, we'll start with the ESPN FC guys talking about what was the 1-0 loss yesterday for Man United and then finishing bottom of the group and being out of Europe.
Out of everything in Europe, they finished bottom of the group. Bayern Munich winning by 1-0. Bayern confirmed then we knew they were going to be top of the group. Anyway, elsewhere, Copenhagen with that 1-0 win over Galatasaray sees them qualified second, and they'll be in Friday's draw. Mark Ogden is with us with a dodgy internet, so this could be fun. Jan Åge Fjørtoft with us as well. Craig, that was a great 90 minutes.
Oh, I have to be honest, I just loved all the games up there on the screen. It was just so exciting, you know. Final day at the office in the Champions League. I think, really, there is some congratulations in order here, if we go the other way. Because it's actually quite an achievement for Manchester United to finish bottom of that group.
Right.
Trust me. There is some achievement to finish bottom of that group. Bayern Munich, by the way, have struggled a little bit in Germany.
Yeah.
They're not the
they lost
league leaders.
5-1 at the weekend. That's quite
hammered by Eintracht Frankfurt. Galatasaray, I've got no recent history in the Champions League. And Copenhagen, you know, they're a workmanlike side, but, you know, the budget's very small in comparison, and yet they finish bottom of the group, having lost the most amount of goals by any English team ever in the group stages. I mean, there's nothing else to say, but it was unexpected, and it's an embarrassment.
Ten Hag said they didn't deserve to lose.
Oh, well. Eric, you're not helping yourself, Eric. Look, and the stats will tell you a story, but I think if you just want to focus on something, this was a match that Manchester United needed to win. Regardless of what happened at Copenhagen, Manchester United needed to give themselves a chance, an opportunity to win. In order to do that, early on in the match, I was expecting, I don't know why, but I was expecting that Manchester United were going to come out and we're going to contest and we're going to compete and challenge 50-50 balls and win duels so that at the very least you get Old Trafford behind you, believing that this was possible. And what did we see from Manchester United? Watching Bayern Munich play and have possession of the ball. It's almost as if this team has already accepted their fate. Yeah. That they are resigned to the fact they're a bad team. They've accepted it, and now you're just going through the motions. And yes, you run around and you put some endeavor, just enough to get through, but not enough to challenge anybody in particular. In that quote, post-game, he also said that the team showed spirit. I watched Manchester United play, and there is no spirit. There is no soul. There is no life in this team. There is no sparkle. There is no fire. There is nothing. There is an acceptance of being a bad team. And once the players accept that, and the manager seems to be accepting that as well, even though he may say something differently, and the fans themselves, they've accepted it as well. They're resigned to the realities of Manchester United. There's nowhere to go here. Nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. Manchester United, simply put, they're a bad team without any sort of soul, without any sort of spirit, without any fire.
Ali Moreno not mincing words. Craig Burley not there either. Janusz, do you concur? Is this basically a team that is rudderless and a little bit lifeless, or do you see a heartbeat in here? Like what do you see when you look at not just United's performance yesterday, but kind of in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I mean, part of it, of course, a lot of it is true, and we've been talking about it for a while now. But I think, you know, and this is a little bit of a hindsight, but I mean, it's been coming, and it's been coming for years. So I suppose to a degree, we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is Manchester, but it's not United, right? I mean, this is a Manchester that's living in the past. The present is what we see right now. And the future is not looking good because you can't fix these things overnight. You can put a Band-Aid on certain things, but certain things you can hide. And, you know, I look at this and, yeah, we can talk about this game. But, you know, I mean, they've had the opportunities. This is a team that scored 12 goals. That's as many goals as Bayern Munich have scored. The problem is defensively, right? They've conceded 15. This is also a team that had 2-goal leads against Copenhagen and Galatasaray. So, I mean, I'm not saying this would have been a different team, but they've had plenty of opportunities. I just think that maybe there is some truth to the fact that they understand that they're not good, but they understand also that this team is not put together in a way that it should be, right? Because Erik Ten Hag, as you all know, doesn't play like this. This is supposed to be a pressing team. This is supposed to be a team that possesses the ball, and it isn't. But part of the problem is, how do you build a team? And as I've said before, do the players want to come? Look, for years we've been talking about Real Madrid and Manchester United as the top two biggest teams in the world. And we talk about financially and trophies and this, that, or the other, right? And I'm still pretty sure it's that way. I don't know if it's 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, wherever it is, right? But look at the reaction of Real Madrid when they had to rebuild. Who'd they get rid of? Casemiro, Varane, right? Even Sergio Ramos, who isn't in Manchester United, but I somehow think that if he was available, Manchester United probably would have taken him. Eriksen, conceding goals. Those are the players. Amrabat even. I mean, Johnny Evans is coming into the lineup. You can sit here and tell me all you want about Maguire. He's not getting better. This is as good as it gets, and it's average. Nothing more. Nothing more. It's not going to change. So I think when you build that team, and this team has been built like that, emergency buys and players that kind of come maybe for a paycheck, but not to win the trophies. Because if you ask them honestly, they'd say, they look around the dressing room and they say, it's impossible to compete with the best teams in the world with this. It just isn't. I mean, there's a lot of injuries, and some of it you can foresee, as I mentioned. Some of it is age, some of it is maybe not dealing with the team properly. I don't know, Luke Shaw, I mean, how shocked are we after such a long time where he's come in and played, I don't know, 2 or 3 games in 10 days or even less than that? Are we surprised that he's broken down? So you look at this team and you look at somebody like Antony. He's got what, 1 assist the entire season so far, not 1 goal. How many? 70, 80 million? I don't even remember, right? Garnacho, okay, great goal. But I look at the 2 wings and I look at this youngster who probably should be learning from the best right now. I'm talking about Rasmus Højlund, who's got 10, 15 touches less than his goalkeeper, but no service, because Antony and Garnacho, by the way, who's works hard, I got to give him that, but they play for themselves. They didn't play for the team. And you can go on and on by every position. As I've mentioned, you look at McTominay, who's not supposed to even be on that team, if we believe people ahead of the season, is looking like Ronaldo right now. But that in itself is not good either. So there's all kinds of issues with this team, and you almost have to blow this up, because there's so much pressure on massive clubs to turn around. And sometimes it does happen, but obviously looking at the last 2 or 3 or 4 coaches who haven't gotten right, I mean, you tell me who's going to come in and change that overnight. So nothing's going to change right now, at least not until obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe comes in, because that would be even crazier story if they pulled the trigger on him, unless they quietly spoken to him. That I don't know, of course. And nothing's going to change, and it shows. Arsenal took him a little bit, and as we know, a couple of 8th place seasons, and then they kind of grew and finished 5th, and now we see that they're about. But it takes time. But Manchester United want to change it overnight without really thinking it through and having an idea on how to rebuild and think progressively and ahead of time.
You mentioned a couple, just the comparison to Real Madrid. They were going through financial issues and trying to rebuild, but they cut bait with some players that have been around for a while. They also, whether it's investment in players or development of players, like you've got Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, others that are playing on that are better than anybody on United's team by leaps and bounds. You also mentioned Arsenal in the mix, though, too, in terms of their mid-table finishes, or and I'm a fan. Anybody who watches the show probably knows that by now. I'm a Gunner supporter. That they were struggling, but it's also and understanding if they were trying to put people in place when you look back on it to try to run this thing. Edu comes in. What's your vision? What's the process? How does this work? Okay, the Cronkies are getting crushed. Josh moves over to London, and he's going to invest more. They're going to invest more. They're going to try to do something organizationally. Where I make that comparison is they were less concerned about the financial piece of things in terms of making money and the economics of it. United is a money-making machine. As you noted, it is, along with Real Madrid, is one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they kind of oscillate, and sometimes Barcelona's been there. When you look at the Forbes list the last 10 years, it's one of the most biggest brands in the world and most valuable, and it's still making money. The commercial needs and desires have outweighed the football needs and desires for years. That's why you bring back Ronaldo in the first place. There weren't many football justifications for it. He did score a lot of goals. We get that. But you saw the meltdown that everybody kind of knew was coming based on Father Time. My concern is when you look at the totality of it, the commercial piece is still so important to them and drives decision making. There's an absence of leadership. There is void of leadership. And you just mentioned, when does Radcliffe come in? When do you have a director of football? When do you actually let the football lead on what we should be doing? And who in the suits is going to talk to and is going to get who they believe is the right coach and start to put this thing together? And it's not going to happen overnight. But you think you have Ten Hag, and this poor guy is floundering, and sometimes his own volition of whether he's starting Johnny Evans ahead of Varane in the last few months, or you got different other examples from you mentioned Anthony's was his guy. He's been terrible, and it cost him like $80 million or something like that. Like, it's been a debacle at every level. And what I wonder is, when you have a void of leadership, when the interests aren't the football, can still lead the way in the boardroom, how do you square that circle? And how long is it going to take? And who is the right person to come in there to take this job? Because you're going to get hammered at some point. But at some point, you have to have a vision from the top, communicated down, have a manager that sees it, and you're going to invest in it. And then you eventually will execute against it. We're seeing an Arsenal plan in year basically 3 and change of that. And they're finally now competing for the title like we think they should. United might have to go through the same process, Janusz, but I just don't know who the pieces are, like when the pieces of the top get organized to even worry about the actual product on the field. They're still going to play games, and it's going to be a disaster for the rest of the year. I don't know how to change this.
You've got to stop, first and foremost, you have to stop trying to cut the corners. And, in hopes that overnight, by buying 1 or 2 players, you're going to fix a long-term project. And this is exactly what it's been. And it's been a long, long time since Sir Alex Ferguson left. It was 2012 or 2013. So that's first and foremost. If you Glazers, of course, they take a lot of money out of the club. They've invested a lot of money. Obviously, the investment hasn't been good because there's no leadership in terms of that vision. That's a hard part. I mean, I don't want to hammer United just for that, because we've seen it. It's not easy to get somebody like Sir Alex Ferguson was, like Arsene Wenger where they had a finger on everything that goes on in the club. And maybe to a degree, in the end, that wasn't the right thing to do. But certainly you have to have the leaders, and you have to find a manager who sees this as an opportunity. Because right now it's easy to say, well, which players will want to come to the club? Not many, not the best players in the world. United is no longer that club, because all the players are looking at it and they see other options that are better. The best players in the world, Manchester United has always been one of the biggest options, but it isn't right now. So that may be second, third, or fourth, the sort of players that we see right now. But, you first and foremost, you have to find now a leader that sees an opportunity in this chaos. Because there are people, I always say, when there's chaos, there's an opportunity. And you know what? If I were a manager, if I were younger, and I'd say to myself, look at this mess that Manchester United are. The first person that gets this right is going to be a legend forever. And that's where you have to find a visionary that's going to find a time, that's going to be able to convince the ownership, whoever the director of coaching is going to be, because that's first and foremost, obviously, that's going to be able to convince them that there is a way, but it's going to have to be a more patient way, not the way United are trying to cut the corners.
Essentially mentioned chaos and opportunity. I mean, Churchill's famous quote, never let a good crisis go to waste. So there is an opportunity there, and we'll see if somebody comes in there. Just real quick on the winter transfer window, when you have this lack of vision, but there still is a talent gap. They have a lack of talent and quality players. How, if at all, they attack this window, given that you probably have a lame duck manager, but you need to get better players into your club?
Well, I mean, it's going to be difficult because they're going to have to sell, and they're desperate right now, and everybody knows it. And a lot of these players, because it was a stopgap, they were desperate themselves to get some of these players, right? When you look at, it's hindsight, but look at Anthony's of the world and some of the bigger names, they overpaid for what they are delivering. So in order to get real money for that, it's going to be very difficult. Everybody around the world knows that. So it's not going to be easy. But I'll tell you what, the worst thing about United is that if you have given some of these players an opportunity to run right now, they would.
Yeah, they definitely would.
And I'll tell you what, and who has true value? Who are the players that you're going to get right now? And those are the hard decisions. I'm not even talking about January. I mean, that's probably too soon to make it happen because it's going to be massive. But I think they seriously need to consider letting Bruno go, because you're going to get something for him. I mean, there's a team out there. He's talented enough. If you can kind of surround him with players that will do what he likes to do and won't complain in a way, at least it seems that way, he's still a very good player. unfortunately for him to be at the best level, he needs better players around him, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in January. It is what it is right now at Manchester United, and that's going to change much. But I would definitely consider, because you can get value for that, you can get a lot of money, and you can start the rebuilding process. So, you know what? If you gave Bruno now an opportunity to go, this is my guess. I think he'd go. If it's a good club that's in the Champions League, he'd probably go.
I think you're dead right on that. I do think that maybe some United fans should find hope that if you find the right manager, to your point, the right vision, and you have some alignment with the senior staff, which we're going to figure out who the heck that is. You do look at North London and Tottenham. They're going through struggles, but they have a manager that plays a style. He's taken and gotten the best out of what players were left, and they just sold one of the best strikers in Europe for a 9-figure price to get money into the club to help them rebuild down the line. So maybe there's that can be somewhat of a model, but they got a lot of other things to figure out before that. Let's be a little more positive. Had some very great, really good performances by underdogs. Girona beat Barca this past weekend 4-2. They sit atop the table. Bayern Leverkusen is atop the table in the Bundesliga over Bayern. And when you look at Villa, obviously they just beat City. They just beat Arsenal. They are right there in the contention for the Premier League. Let's look at some of the underdogs. We start with Girona. Let's hear the ESPN FC guys talking about, the TV guys talking about quite a great story in Spain.
After 16 matches, Girona, top of La Liga table, 2 points clear of Real Madrid. That victory over Barca puts them 7 clear of the defending champions. As you can imagine, this was the story that dominated the front page of the newspapers in Spain, talking about this extraordinary run that Girona have been on. Barca, of course, the latest and greatest side for them to slay, as they are going against the odds to put themselves top of the table. For more on this, let's welcome in from Spain, shall we? Alex Kirkland is here. Alex, I'll come to you in a minute. It's interesting, Craig. I watched this game and I thought of you because of what happened last weekend when we were doing Atleti together. And we were so disappointed by Atleti not going toe-to-toe with Barcelona, retracting into their shell. And the concern was that Girona would do the same. They didn't. They were brilliant.
No, I think there was always more of a chance of Atleti regressing a little bit to the means, which is what they did for a period. I think Girona's just a different animal this year. They play on the front foot. They play attacking football. They've got a lot, not every player, but they've got a lot of cast-offs. They don't spend big. They've never spent more than, I think, 7 or 8 million on a player. The highest have finished 10th. They got Eric Garcia at the back, who was poor at Man City, was poor at Barcelona, alongside Daley Blind, who Robbo said in the commentary yesterday was absolutely superb.
Yeah.
But Daley Blind, I thought he'd retired. And what impressed me more, particularly as the second half wore on, was they, to me, played the better football out of the two teams. We can dissect Barcelona's defending, and we will. But out of the two sides, there was more of an idea and a pattern to what Girona were trying to do, rather than the sort of desperation of what Barca were trying to do. And the consummate ease that they were able to get from defence to the final third in attack, and how quick they did it and how easily they did it, was scary. It was great from Girona, the way they passed it out of defence, into the middle, around the corner, up to the big front man, or out wide, and before you know it, they were running at a very, very fragile back four. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. I watched them a couple of weeks ago against Athletic Club. It was a 1-1 draw at home. And I thought Athletic Club put up a bigger test for them that day than Barcelona did at the Montjuic yesterday.
All right, there's Craig Burley weighing in on Girona. He mentioned something funny. I actually thought the same thing earlier in the season, but I was surprised Daley Blind was on that team. I did not know. So I said that's how they were obviously off most of our radars, and now they are sitting atop the league in Spain. What do you make of Girona right now, Janusz?
Well, I mean, it's been superb as you see the squad. I mean, a lot of surprises there because the players that are coming in are filling in and playing at a level that look, I mean, I know Dovbik and I know Tsigankov in particular. I was actually trying to bring Tsigankov to Major League Soccer. Nobody wanted him. There you have it. Those are great players. It's a little bit of a surprise. They've had history. Remember last season, Tati Castellanos, who play here for NYCFC, another team that's owned by Manchester City, and that group, of course, had 4 goals against Real Madrid last season. Now he's at Lazio trying to find his way, and now in comes Dovbyk, changes that. You also have Stuani that can come in off the bench. He's got the experience, a little bit older, but still can score goals. So that's positive. I think defensively it's a little bit of an issue. Now that I mentioned a little bit of, our neck of the woods, Yangel Herrera, who also plays in that midfield, former NYCFC, very, very important player, I think, as you go through the season, because in the center of the pitch, he gives you that little bit of a strength and that transition that he's very good at. Defensively, it's a bit of an issue. I mean, they score goals, 39 goals, up there with the best. Have conceded 20. I think the simple answer to that is that the pressure is going to get to them. We've been here. We've done that. I mean, look at some of the teams that have asked questions of Barcelona, Real Madrid in the past. Look at even Real Sociedad now. Look what they're doing in the Champions League. Top of the group now, ahead of Inter, obviously, and they play just as good, and you could argue maybe even better than Girona. And look at the difficulties they've had at a time where Real Madrid and Barcelona aren't even at their best. Atleti always there or thereabouts. So I know it's a great story, and I think the spirit and the way they play and the lack of pressure can go a long way, but that pressure will come, and it's going to start coming right about now and for the rest of the season. And if I look the way Real Madrid are kind of, as we've mentioned and earlier talking about Manchester United, rebuilding, right? I mean, they still don't, no Thibaut Courtois, although obviously in the goalkeeping department with Lunin and Kepa, they're fine, but he comes in, Militao comes back, Vinny Jr. comes back, Bellingham's doing incredible. Look again how they're phasing out Luka Modric, and let's not forget, against Union Berlin in a game that meant absolutely nothing to them, right? They still didn't have Tchouaméni and Camavinga, and yet they still can kind of use Toni Kroos, some of the veterans like Kroos and Modric, to kind of get themselves through, not just in the Champions League, in La Liga. I think if you look at Girona, there's going to come a time that depth is going to be showing, and they'll be lucky to fight for the 4th spot in the league.
Okay, I mean, right now the odds makers, the ESPN bet has Madrid still a significant favorite, minus 185 to win the title. Barcelona, second favorite, plus 450, 4.5 times your money. And Girona is 5-1, currently ahead of Atleti. It would be an amazing story. They do really harken back to Leicester for me, obviously, in terms of can they outlast? And we all said that they couldn't, and Leicester found a way. But within that, though, the Premier League teams around Leicester that year were significantly down or underperformed, but we thought they would. To your point, I don't think Madrid's going to do that. Madrid's got enough institutional knowledge. You only need one team to overtake them and kind of stay at their average level, if you will. And I think Madrid will do enough in the end. Let's go to the Bundesliga, because this one I think is interesting, because Leverkusen already drew Bayern this year. They have a lot of good players, a different pedigree. And this team's been in the Champions League for most of the last decade. Quality players, a coach that's Xabi, Xabi Alonso's done everything in football. They're currently plus 225, second favorite. Bayern minus 300, massive favorites to win the Bundesliga. And bear in mind, last year, Janusz, as you know, they shouldn't have won it. I mean, Dortmund literally just gave them the title last year, and Bayern's still massive favorites in this. When you look at Leverkusen, I really feel like they have staying power without a doubt. Do you question their ability to be there in April and May competing for the title?
No, I don't. I know we talk about Girona. In a second, we're going to talk about Aston Villa. They're teams that maybe there's an opportunity this season to do something special. And if you're going to pick a team, it's Bayer Leverkusen. And I know we kind of laugh about it because the Neverkusen. But this is a different team, that's for sure. Not only do they have a young, progressive and a very, very good manager in Xabi Alonso, but the way they play, they can possess, they can attack. I mean, in particular, when you look at some of these goals, they're breathtaking, but they can also score a goal with 2 or 3 passes. And what I love about them is their balance, because it's incredible. When you watch Leverkusen, you really understand that in terms of going forward, I mean, they have so much, right? And they're maybe second best in terms of scoring goals, 39 at this moment. I think Bayern are ahead of them, but it's defensively. I mean, that balance. I mean, they're the best in the league, conceding 20 goals. And you look at Tapsoba and look at Jonathan Tah. I mean, now everybody's talking about Tapsoba and Tah. They won them. You look at Grimaldo. I think we all remember him. I hope that people in Bundesliga have found out, but we remember him at Benfica, right? His set pieces, his free kicks, his ability to get forward. I mean, his crossing is second to none. His ability to really come inside, take the ball on the dribble. So you're talking, I mean, they often play with 3, sometimes they play with 4. So they're really, really strong. And you know what? It doesn't end there, because now you have, I kind of want to take my hat off, because, Xhaka coming over, we saw him leaving last season Arsenal, how important it was. After so many years of, I don't know if it was underperforming, or maybe it was that transition where we sort of always look at Xhaka as the scapegoat, but maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was just that process of rebuilding the team, and he sort of looked bad, but he came good for Arsenal last season, to a point where Arsenal probably, if they could have kept him, they would have kept him. And by the way, this Arsenal is missing that piece on that left side, aren't they? Right? They could have used him there instead of, some of the players that they have. And he's playing here, I mean, in an incredible way. Look at Boniface, right? I mean, Moussa Diaby leaves, and you think it's a big hole. Boniface comes in, fills that in. Frimpong has been absolutely outstanding. Another piece on that right-hand side where he can just bomb anywhere you put him in that situation. So I just think that, that Xhaka, Ezequiel Palacios, another player in the midfield, it's as balanced as anyone in that. And because of what you've mentioned, that this is certainly not the Bayern Munich that we've seen. This is continuation of last season, where there are many questions that we can ask about them. Of course, Borussia Dortmund, still not a team that you think that Bayer Leverkusen can get past. Stuttgart, actually, I think the last two draws for Leverkusen were against Stuttgart and Dortmund in the league. Not necessarily the worst thing. They just beat Dortmund in the Pokal as well. So this is a team that has proven over the season right now that they are fully deserving to be at the top of the league. And it's not just because Bayern is off a little bit and Dortmund maybe as well. They just, based on what they do going forward and defensively, they truly deserve to be top of the league. So I can see that probably more than any other teams that we mentioned today in this piece.
I think you're dead right. You mentioned the balance. I think the consistency of performance from this team has been rather remarkable through the course of this year, and I think it is sustainable. I think you also got to look at the league broadly when you're thinking about these, not necessarily long shots, but these underdogs we've talked about. It's what type of league are they in? What have they done against teams they're supposed to beat? And obviously Girona's taking care of their business. Bayern Leverkusen has done it across the board. So to Villa, because Villa, the challenge with winning the Premier League, though, is there are more teams and more stumbling blocks along the way, at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom. There's a deeper depth of talent that causes these problems. Villa right now beat City, beat Arsenal this past weekend. They're flying high. They're in third behind Arsenal, Liverpool, and right ahead of City. They're still not one of in the equation, though, to win it from the odds makers' perspective. City minus 110, Liverpool 3-1, Arsenal plus 325, 3.25 on your money. When you look at Villa, are they going to be competing for the top four, or are they going to find a way, Unai Emery and crew, to compete for the title when we're looking forward to spring?
Yeah, you almost have to earn that. It's almost too early to say, right? Because again, with Leverkusen is a little bit different, because they're the sort of team that's kind of always been up there in the Bundesliga. They've often been in the Champions League. I think there's some pedigree that goes with that. With Villa, I don't think we have that, and it's way too early. I think it's an incredible job that Unai Emery has done, but again, pressure is going to come in, just like Girona, and Leverkusen are different because they felt that pressure over the years. Villa, when was the last time they found themselves in this position? Almost like a little bit of a nosebleed. And although they have a great manager and they have a great team, I mean, they're obviously incredible at Villa Park, but away, there's still some issues. I think that the league being so competitive, unlike, I don't want to say the other leagues aren't, but not to the same degree. I think obviously now, as we've said, festive season ahead of the festive season. Right now, the games are coming thick and fast. They're in Europe as well, which is good. They'll probably come out of that group. Oh, no, they're out of the group already, I think. Legia, Alkmaar, it's just a question when. I don't know if that helps them or hurts them. I think they have enough depth to get through the next month or so, and I think we'll know more about it. But I look at them as I think at this moment, legitimate contender for the top four, but not for the title. I think at some stage that pressure and maybe a couple injuries that everybody's going through, but them. I mean, they'll recover Minks, which is going to be big. Other than that, they're pretty, relatively healthy, I think. And they're firing on all cylinders. But I think there's, even in the last couple of games, the effort they gave against Manchester City was incredible. against Arsenal, right? I mean, they looked spent to me. I mean, Arsenal lost that game. I'm not sure they deserve to lose that game. They deserve something out of it. They controlled the game after conceding an early goal, but I just have a feeling that there's going to be some hiccups from Villa, not necessarily because they're not well coached or that they're not talented enough, but that's just the nature of the season eventually. So way too early to even start talking about the title, but not impossible top 4.
Yeah, top 4, they're still there. It's them, Spurs, and Newcastle kind of in a betting triumvirate there that kind of oscillate between who's the favorite to get in that 4th spot behind Liverpool, City, and Arsenal. When you look at their schedules coming up, to your point, they're in the group stage. They have a match coming up on the 14th, Thursday. Then they have Brentford, home to Sheffield United, at Man United, home to Burnley. So as tough as that schedule is, when they're
terrible.
Tight, there are some very winnable games there. When Sheffield United and Burnley are both of them 2 out of 4, and Man United the way they are right now, you feel pretty good about that. We're going to finish on Man United where we started real quick here. You touched on Bruno being a piece they could sell to help them rebuild. When we look at transfers, will they sell Casemiro? Was Casemiro still a value at his age? Like, who are the pieces other than Bruno? Is it Casemiro? Is it somebody else you see that could give them some money back to help to rebuild this thing?
I think if I were at United, I would look at every aspect, not just of the club, inside and out, right? Because we're talking Old Trafford, we're talking training center. Glazers understand what that is, right? I mean, they live in the United States. I mean, Major League Soccer teams have better stadiums, not as big, but better stadiums and training facilities than Manchester United, arguably the richest club in the world or close to it, right? So they have to look at that. But I think when it comes to the players, I think everybody, and that includes, I mean, Casemiro, that's an easy one. I think I could understand why he was brought in, and I almost want to say that he paid for himself last season, right?
He was great.
He delivered, but again, he's not getting any better. It's going to be difficult. Yeah. The way Ten Hag wants to play, and even though this team is not playing, I don't see how he can fit in. But that's not going to be easy to unload him. Who's going to take him, and how much money are they going to gain from him? But players like Bruno and Rashford, in my opinion, I would float it out there, because if you're truly going to rebuild this team, then you have to say to yourself, these players, to one degree or another, have been underperforming. Rashford has been up and down, and injuries and seemingly good in only one position, even though we always say that he could play here, then, and everywhere. I don't think that's true necessarily. So anyway, I would look at everybody, and that includes Rashford, Bruno, and Casemiro, of course. That would be an easy one.
Yeah, we'll see if they do anything here. Transfer window opens in about 2.5 weeks. Janusz, great stuff as always here on ESPN FC Live here on YouTube. You can get the daily show every day, 6 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN FC TV. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.